Hello, Emily Wright here, freelance journalist and lover of all things London, and as you all now well know, this sofa, which is will henceforth be known as the Opportunity London Sofa, where we're going to be doing our series on the people and leaders and projects that are shaping the future of London's built world. Now, today we are so lucky to be joined by someone who's making a pretty brave move, actually. In the fourth week of a roll, we've got Leigh Johnson, Managing Director of Barking Riverside, on the Opportunity London Sofa with us today, talking all things housing and brownfield regeneration. A huge amount of experience in that, but new to the Barking Riverside role, and I don't think that's going to stand in the way of the discussion whatsoever. And of course, as always, we're joined by Jace Tyrrell, Chief Executive of Opportunity London. Thank you both so much for joining me today. Leigh, let's talk about it. It's going in at the time of recording, going into the fourth week in the role.
Fourth week. I started twitching my foot when you said that. But yeah, fourth week, but still super keen, super excited. It's discovering all things. It's a good place to be in a new job.
You used the word invigorating earlier.
I did. It is. It does feel like that. It does feel like that. When I turn up on site, I feel, it blows me away every time I turn up. But in terms of, the scale, the site, the location, everything's got to offer. It's really exciting.
Well, welcome. And thank you so much for coming to talk about, what's going on at Barking Riverside so soon into the role. And as I say, I don't think it's going to stand in the way of the discussion whatsoever. But I do know that you are an absolute pro when it comes to housing and brownfield regeneration more broadly. So can we start off there and talk a little bit about how important you think that is to a city like London? And then Jace, will come to you to talk about the investment side of that. And then we can dig a little bit into Barking Riverside more specifically. But housing, brownfield regeneration, housing, it's one of the, invigorating a good word, it's one of the most invigorating, but one of the most complicated, thorniest issues that a city can face. So where do you think London is on all of that at the moment?
Regeneration, it's the ambition that comes behind them. It's, and it's the vision and staying true to that, but understanding where you are and what the opportunity is for that site, and irrespective of how large, small scale the site is. I think brownfield regeneration is challenging, and it's you have to play the long game. You can talk about long game, you can talk about patient capital, but there has to be that committed partners and stakeholders involved in it. And I think obviously the pressures on London as a whole in terms of the housing need across the whole country, but in particular affordability and good quality housing in London is terrifying in some ways, but the regeneration opportunities are the one opportunity that you can get where you can get large scale housing relatively quickly, because generally regen projects do have a will and a support, whether it be the local authority, in this instance, obviously the mayoral support generally across London, but and having willing partners. So, brownfield regeneration, particularly at scale, is where you can achieve, you can get multiple outlets, you can get multiple delivery partners on board and really start to sort of build at scale all the things that we know that this government and most people want in terms of housing.
Thank you very much. And Jace, from an investment perspective, as I say, it's a thorny issue. It's a invigorating issue. It's a very emotive issue as well. But how important is this, part of what London has to offer in terms of housing and brownfield regeneration, in terms of attracting investment and piquing interest?
Global capital has a choice, which asset class, which country, which city. And look, it's well sort of known in the market that actually development-led financing is more challenging. And there's, viability challenges, there's costs. So I think the importance of the partnership that Leigh is heading up and that political support, the outcome focus, the delivery. Of course, you've got to look at the capital stack and how you're putting that together, and there needs to be a return on that investment. But I think for London, the more that we have partnerships like Barking Riverside, the leadership of these partnerships is hugely important in this race for capital. And yes, we have this almighty challenge to deliver the housing at pace, both the government and the mayor and the local councils. So they want to deliver this. And I think the other thing we're seeing, not just in the sort of the financial capital needed, but also the innovation in the types of design that we've got, the tenure, the structures. And I think the great thing about Barking Riverside is this breadth of housing the long game, but also the fact that you can think about different tenures, different way to stack these partnerships. And I'm quite envious of Leigh. She's coming at a time when we're being very creative in that innovation, and it'll be amazing to see what you're going to bring in the next couple of years to the partnership and the place.
Great point. And I think, Leigh, the first question that I want to ask you really around Barking Riverside is what drew you to that role in that area? I'm
being honest. I've always been a sort of a North London and a West London kind of girl in terms of the projects. Home counties, sort of, a lot of the sort of large scale delivery. A lot of which probably 15 to 20 years ago was probably multi-phase sites in Greenfield in places like Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire up. And then in the last sort of 12 years, working in places, in Essex, sort of town centre regeneration, and seeing the impact and the benefit for people and for homes in there, and the benefit of that wider social piece. I've done work in Barking and Dagenham from a development perspective in a previous role, so know the borough, know obviously their commitment with Be First and the role that they have. But not going to lie, the scale and the ambition of the site is incredibly exciting. But also for me, from working on these large scale projects that are between anything from 5 to 20 years in their delivery, the opportunity to come into a project which is still in some ways, in terms of the delivery aspect, is very early days, but it's got that infrastructure in. It's just, for me, on paper, it is the dream role from truly inhabiting the master developer piece, which is critical for me. It's that, that owning, what can we do here with our partners, with our joint venture investors, how are we doing this? What are we delivering, and how are we taking it to the market? But to have that launch pad of, the infrastructure, the clipper, that amazing station that's coming into it, they're the sort of things that never get delivered first.
No.
All the projects I've worked on before, it's get the houses in, get the people in, and then it feels like a real drag to how do we get these larger pieces of infrastructure? So we're almost destination piece first, and then build the community around it. But we do already have a community of circa 3,500 homes already. So we've got that beauty of those people coming with us and informing and growing as the next stages of the scheme evolve. So for me, it is things I used in my interview, it is a career-defining role for me, both in terms of the project, both in the ambition, but also the JV is quite unusual because normally it's a very true private-public sector, and there is a purpose for those, but they're always a little bit like oil and water. Whereas here it is a quasi public sector, but it's obviously with L&Q as a registered provider, a housing association, and the GLA, they're both pushing in the same direction. It's about legacy, it's about quality homes, and it's about delivering at pace. So
easy job, Leigh.
Super easy, but easy job. But like I say, everything's pointing in the right direction,
Totally, yeah.
and we've got that good base to go from. So that's what excited me.
And just on that, investors look at this. It matters when they're sitting in the investment committees, they're making those decisions on where they're going to invest. The partners, they look at risk and return. They look at that guarantee of delivery. And I think, don't underestimate the value of that and what that brings to those capital investment decisions.
Absolutely. And I was gonna ask you, Jason, actually you've just answered that question really for me, is that how important is that, that joint venture when you're looking at it from an investment perspective, and when investors are looking at where to put their funds? And it sounds like it plays a pretty significant role.
It does. And I think, again, what we've seen in the foresight to put the infrastructure in first, to think about, we've heard from other places in the capital that are doing this, but it's certainly moving in that direction. I think to unlock that capital at scale, we're going to have to throw in some more equity, some infrastructure, again, to guarantee the delivery. But the pace of delivery is really important. And again, we hear from investors all the time, what is that planning risk? What is the pace of delivery? What are the partners involved in that? And I think you're well geared up to deliver this now, which is exciting for the capital.
And Leigh, this is probably the only question I think that's on this list that is a big one to ask someone so soon into the. You can see, thinking, oh God, so soon into a role. And that is, what is your ultimate goal with the role? It's a huge undertaking. But when you took this role, and now mere weeks in, when you look at what you've got lying ahead of you, what is it that you want to achieve with this?
Obviously, they're key components. You can talk about the things, the scale, the number of homes, the type of homes, heights of the homes, all that sort of stuff that's associated with the very important but sort of requirements of planning and, you know, what is that site? But it's that lived experience of what does this place mean to people. And, you know, if you're working on a scheme of, you know, 1,500 homes or whatever, you'll have people potentially moving in, maybe singles, couples, and then they'll move in and they'll have a child, and then it's like, oh, is there a play space? Or, you know, it's that thing about how people grow and live with the place. Whereas here, there is a real opportunity to influence how people live, what their expectations are, where they're going to work. Are they going to work on site? What we bring into that site? What investment could bring to that site? How can we change this space in terms of, you know, we've got 20 plus years on this. You know, what's going to happen? How do you design a local centre? Or how do you design a commercial space that's going to be flexible, adaptable, agile, that can change and pivot? So for me, the success of a place is really just the opportunity for the people that will be living, working and being there, building their lives, but also influencing, like, and not being frightened to listen to those people. What do they want? I mean, particularly there's all the narrative about on these early days of these types of projects, people tend to move from within a 15-minute radius, you know, and therefore, and that generally on a site like this, that's going to be north of the river, rather than you don't take the river in at this point. But, you know, what do those people want? Why? How? You know, why do they want? What are we going to be providing, or how are we going to be working with them to make this space that destination for them? What, you know, how are we going to grow young people? What opportunities are there going to be? So, I think, you know, it's the size of a new town, a small a large village, should we say? You know, a success for me would be people that are, and colleagues call it, you know, who are going to be the first pioneers, whether that be investors or people that buy in the homes. Who are going to be those pioneers that move in and then build their life and grow and become the people of the Riversiders, or whatever we want to call them.
The Riversiders.
You know, whatever they want to call themselves. You know, how do they evolve and in an organic fashion in terms of how do they live, belong long term? And that's really exciting. You know, when I turn up on site, if I'm a little bit late and I get there at 8:30, it is a sea of burgundy blazers with the kids, you know, because we've got
schools.
5 of the 7 schools have been built.
Yes.
One of which is outstanding, and that's a senior school. Sort of, I think it's 10 form entry, but it is and people say, "Oh, don't turn up when it's school turning up." But for me, that brings the place alive, and that's what's really exciting, because they're those people, those kids. Like, where are they going to be working? What are they going to be doing? Are they going to stay? Are they going to want to like work, buy homes, you know, stay close, build that community? And that's what's really exciting to me. So
you do get a sense, though, like I've been a couple of times, I'm coming back, you know, in the next month or two, but I think there is a community. I mean, we talk about community and it's not superficial. It feels really embedded genuinely. And I think I've got to shout out to Councillor Darren Rodwell. I mean, I remember the first time I went to Barking, I had the tour. I think a lot of us in the industry have done the Barking and the Barking Riverside tour, but the people of Barking and the new leadership there and what you're doing, you really feel it genuinely.
And again, I can't, I've only sort of scratched the surface, but you know, some of the anecdotes and some of the information the team have given me, there's some real sort of entrepreneurial spirit. There's some really good and interesting, lot of sort of startups with women that are driving them, sort of small businesses that again we will look to as a business, we will look to support and grow those sorts of things. You know, how can that inform again what the space could be like? What are these commercial spaces going to be? You know, how are they going to sort of nurture these sorts of people and organisations, but it's that possibility, it's that opportunity and I know they're the words to throw around, but it's so exciting. Genuinely. You know, we've got people there that are actually investing in not only their home, their place, their business, and wanting to build more. And like, you can't ask for more when you've got that really good bones. It's got really good bones already.
It's interesting, the question, like we talk in the built environment about 10, 20, 30-year projects, but, you know, what is the future? We talk a lot of workspace, but home space, you know, and what are you building today and what we want in 10 years or 15 or 20 years? And this conversions of your workspace and home space and community, fascinating. Right?
It's interesting. And it's the thing about, you know, when you talk in really planning terms, sort of modal shift and get the infrastructure, get the transport infrastructure in. But the difference is now, post-COVID, people aren't necessarily using, you know, it's not about commuting out, is it? Where I think what is different, and we talked about it outside, was you know, the clipper is things like, how do we use that to get people in, and what are they coming into? And that's where the investment piece comes in, is what's this place going to offer, and how's it going to change? And you know, we've got obviously our very clear, class uses and spaces that are set out in the master plan. But again, those sort of things flex, change, move with the market and with what the demand is.
Yeah.
And so it's just having those conversations and working with people like yourselves and that level of exposure, which is going to be exciting.
And do you think, sorry, I'm jumping in
I
here.
was going to say, I'm just going to take a step back.
I might just do one more, then back to our,
No.
our interviewer. But, thinking about like BTR and different uses, are you thinking about that as well?
You've got to have. I think it's really tricky in the last, do we talk about the market over the last couple of years, which has just been crazy. There's been again, it depends. So look, you have to have the whole, mixed balance communities, but there has to be real broad brush of tenures, typologies, and product on this place, because that's what's going to make it thrive, because it's about diversity of place, diversity of people. So yeah, BTR, there is a place for it, but again, it's not just and that's where in our capacity as sort of master developer, there's that we're sort of holding the line in terms of how do we manage that. This is not about fire sales or quick wins or things. This is about how does this work long term? Yes. What's that impact going to have on the bottom line in the short term? Probably great, but long term community wise, we don't. It's not about a transient. I'm not saying all BTR is, but it's just being really careful about and how you curate this place and how you curate the type of tenures and typologies that we have on here. So but then there needs to be, you've got to have that broad range, because if you want a broad range of people living there, they've all got different demands and expectations and affordability as well. So
I love seeing like perhaps older people. I put myself in that category almost, but actually that mix with older and younger and children, you're seeing much more of that mix in community, aren't you?
It is really important, because there's that whole piece about older people and loneliness and how you deal with that, and particularly when high density schemes, there's a lot to be said about. There's great examples of where sort of elderly, it sounds awful, but older living. How, and that's
later living. It's
how that again, it's that town village approach of people looking out and knowing your neighbours. And it's so important, and it's a healthy attitude to have, to look out for people. And there's that's a success as well if you can incorporate that sort of approach in terms of mixed tenures and typologies of the people as well would be great.
And the tagline for Barking Riverside is a place to be, become and belong, which I love. That's very powerful. And you've touched on a few points there. And actually a place to belong, I think, warrants its own separate question, which I'll come to. But what does that tagline mean to you? And I think actually you've touched on some of this already about the community and what it is that people want. But, I understand it's a place to be. A place to become, presumably that's what you were talking about, looking at the burgundy blazers and thinking, are they going to stay? Is it about the development of the community, basically?
And the feeling of wanting to stay, like a reason to stay, rather than, the amount of times when you talk to people, irrespective of, particularly in London, you've got families and there's that support or extended families or networks, and you're losing people because they can't affordability and they have to move out or move somewhere differently, and how do you keep that sort of connection? And the becoming piece is one, what this space and this place will become, because it's going to change, it's going to evolve, and it's going to be influenced by market conditions. And again, the JV has the ability to adapt and pivot, so we will change as a delivery body. I think it is the reason I sort of steered into regeneration is that piece about the responsibility you have about how places and spaces inform people's lives. It's incredibly important.
It is.
And the quality of those places as well. And it's the quality, it's homes, building homes. But what is incredibly important is the spaces and the places between the homes, and that community piece and how people come together. Absolutely, and how we build that. And so that becoming piece is about, that leads into belonging and ownership and, like you say, agency. And, are these people, like we touched on earlier, are these people going to refer to themselves as Riversiders or whatever? But it's that accessibility of this site. Yeah. And so, a place that you're proud of. I bit of backstory, I grew up in a new town. I don't really have a sense of belonging. I'm a sort of a London overspill, grew up in a new town and don't have those roots. It's only when I've got older I've found where my sort of roots are, but it's not where I grew up. For me,
be careful of that, don't we, actually?
It is.
with our new towns and how we build them.
Yeah, we do,
It's
because
really
they can feel a
important.
bit instant.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, so the becoming piece is the exciting piece, because it's the what could that be, and but giving the opportunity and giving the place and the conversations and pulling people in to say, you know, what next, and having that involvement with the community.
Just on that, like, I think the design, and we were talking about it a bit earlier, but actually that sense of belonging, because you go there and you've taken historically, you know, now, and you'll continue that, I'm sure, but the approach to the design, the quality of what you've built there, you feel in a very special place, you know, you feel like you're part of a community, and that's really important in the design. There's a cost to that as well.
There is a cost to that, but again, there's a sense of ownership for us in the short term. There's a responsibility in terms of the level of places and spaces and the legacy of the quality that we're delivering. And obviously we're now working with, we have the community investment company, which will be the legacy vehicle that will deliver that. We're already working with residents on that, that are supporting that, and again, becoming invested. So, you know, I suppose the equivalent of a parish council.
Yes,
there you are. But again, it's
Riverside as parish council.
Yes, I'm sounding quite parochial here, but it's not. But that's why it's so important for us as that master developer, because you set that bar, and it empowers people to say, actually, this is it. You know, for us, when we talk to our potential plot sales and people that are coming on board, you know, they want to be part of that. They want to be part of something that we're holding them to account, and we're raising that quality and meeting that expectation. But we're delivering those spaces between those plot sales with that quality of the public realm and how people are going to use around that. But yeah, that does have a responsibility that goes with it. But, you know, like I say, they're the places and spaces that are going to be the things that people are going to be using, owning, as in sense of ownership and inhabiting and being proud of once we've moved on.
And that, you know, just that all sounds amazing. And what do you think it is that Barking Riverside, I mean, can give lessons to the rest of London on? I mean, there's so much happening across the city, and if you were going to look at that area and say, yeah, like other areas can look at it and take this lesson and that lesson, what do you think are the key the top level wins there that you'd love to see replicated across other similar areas or similar developments?
It's always difficult when we talk about similar, because we talk about scale, because there is no other one that's similar.
20,000 homes. Right?
20,000 homes,
yes.
And you know, one of the stats that I do love is 2 kilometres of south-facing Thames frontage. I mean, what's not to love about that? And,
Riversiders, it's coming.
but also, I think there's been a huge amount, you know, all of these sites, particularly, you know, things like redundant power stations and you know, they are. You know, they're redundant for X amount of years, and therefore they have a huge amount of constraints on them. I think it's very easy to be think about on the downside of oh my gosh, you know, we've got these constraints, this is tricky, how do we deal with this? And all the pressures that you have with any planning application and the policies you need to comply with. But what I always take from these complex projects is you have to look at the constraints and opportunities, but the constraints always make you do a better job. They always make you work that little bit harder. The consultants have to work that little bit harder, and they give it that identity. They make it what's special about this site. And so again, I think the one thing that I would look to other regen projects across and say, this is what you've got to do, right, is find what you love about the site, find about what's that sweet spot, what's that key thing that makes it special about it, because obviously London is so diverse and is such a great space, but it's like, what is going to be the thing that people are going to want to, that people will fall in love into, people will fall in love with, that is that space, and really lean into that and don't lose that identity. And that's one of the key things I'm keen to instill on this project, about what is so fantastic about this site. And it is obviously the Riverside piece, but the wildness of it, and not be frightened of those constraints. You know, the ecology, all those things, they are massive plus points, and they will give you that specific identity for these sites. And so that's the piece for me, that on regen, you know, understand the value of what you've got and play on it.
As with all these things, we could talk about it for hours, but probably hard to believe that we have whipped through our time for this podcast incredibly quickly. So much there, so much to delve into. And thank you very much for coming in so soon after taking on the role. I have to ask, if you were, this is a bit of a mean question, it's a cheeky one, just as you think you're out the door, it's like, if you were to come back and sit on this Opportunity London sofa in a year from now, what would you, if there's one thing that you've really got your sights on for this first year, what would you like to be able to come back and report positively on?
And we'll have you back.
Oh yeah.
And hold you to this.
Okay. Secure the new planning consent.
Okay.
And I've got and we'll have secured another land sale.
Yes.
As in with someone new to develop out on the scheme, which Brilliant. Is that build that momentum, get some more different flags on the site.
I hope we're sitting here and we've done the deal together for London.
There we go.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Well, we'll be able to report back in a year and see how things have gone. But until then, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you to both of you, but particularly Leigh. Sorry, Jace. Particularly Leigh. I mean, going into the 4th week at the time of recording, that is a bold podcast appearance, and one that went without even the tiniest of hitches. So thank you so much, and it was lovely to see you both today.
Thank you for being so welcoming and gentle with me.
Oh,
Thank
yes.
you.
Not at all. Wait until next year.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.